Welcome to the Story True channel, where wildly interesting and true stories await you, and Ben at the microphone. Enjoy watching. It was a normal workday at the Imperial Bank, with as many customers as usual, but towards the end of the day the crowd had thinned out and there were few more customers. A girl of about 7 years old walked in. She was very poorly dressed, a washed-up jacket with a broken zipper, old pants, and boots, obviously too big. She was holding a child's green pistol. The guard stared at the child and thought, what is she doing here, so little, and alone? Where are her parents? It seems a shame to kick her out. It's freezing outside. Let her get warm. The child's face was serious beyond her years, her eyes tearful. The girl confidently went to the window and pointed her toy gun at the cashier, saying, "Auntie, make me a millionaire. Give me money. I really need it. Otherwise, everyone will be bad now." And the child burst into bitter tears. The cashier Helena had seen a lot in her long years of work, and she thought that nothing could get through to her. But here even she was petrified and did not know how to react, whether to cry or laugh at a ridiculous childish prank. According to the instructions in any incomprehensible or dangerous situation, the cashier is obliged to press the alarm button and call the banker in the hall. The woman decided to do so and out of harm's way. Otherwise what if anything? A few minutes later Vyacheslav Igorovich came into the hall, and with surprise looked at the baby with the pistol, which continued to sob and smear tears on her cheeks, and asked Lena, "What happened? An emergency situation? What is the problem?" The woman replied with a smile, "Well, this little guy wants money. He asks for a loan, otherwise he threatens me with the gun. I do realize that it is a toy, but just in case I decided to invite you." The man was dumbfounded, but no sooner had he said a word than a woman of about 75 came running into the bank. She was also poorly dressed, but neat. The old woman grabbed the girl by the hand and mouthed, "Aneka, darling, why did you go alone? I can't even keep up with you. You've stirred people up." Vyacheslav Igorovich numbed. "So, dear lady, is this your granddaughter? What a circus you decided to arrange here." "So burglars. You can get punished for such jokes. We are a serious organization. You should take better care of your child." The grandmother just waved her hand. "How can we not arrange it? The circus that we have already refused credit in all banks." So Aneka got desperate. Her mother is dying in a coma, an operation is urgent, and they're asking a lot of money for her. What's the child's way out? Tell me, what's the solution? She must have seen a lot of movies and decided to take a desperate step. Forgive her, for God's sake. Vyacheslav Igorovich again glanced sternly at the baby. Something had caught him. Someone was very similar, but he could not understand who. The child folded his arms in the form of a prayer and looking straight into his eyes began to beg, "Uncle, lend us some money, please. Mommy is dying. Just do not persecute us. My grandmother and I have nowhere else to go." Something sank inside, and the banker took pity. He waved them off. "Okay, let's go to my office. Let's talk thoroughly. Tell me what your story is, and then we'll see what we can do." In the office the older woman sighed and began to tell, "I haven't even introduced myself to you, Vyacheslav Igorovich. My name is Claudia Matveyevna." You see, the story is long and complicated. I'll just say the main thing. Aneka's mother's name is Masha. She and her daughter rent a corner of my place. She is a good, decent, hard-working woman who sells baked goods at a kiosk. It was hard enough for her. She worked 12 hours a day just to have enough to live on and for her child. 2 months ago Masha was coming home late at night and was run over by a car on a crosswalk, and most importantly, she fled right away. A passerby called an ambulance. So, she fell into a coma, and she needs urgent surgery. Here, I have all her diagnoses in hand. I made copies. Take them. Where can you get that kind of money? No one to help, no relatives. I've got Aneka on my back now. My pension is pennies, and I'm already about 80 years old. I pity both Masha and Aneka. I cannot. After all, if she dies, the child will be immediately taken away to the orphanage. What future awaits her? The situation is a dead end. Have pity. Look at the documents. Maybe you will get the loan. Don't think. Masha will be fine. She will work it all off, down to the last penny. and even more. We'll pay it back together, little by little. Well, not to die, man, if there is no money. After all, Vyacheslav Igorovich looked at his watch and said, I understand everything. I will look at the documents at home in the evening. I'll try to help in any way I can. The bank is not mine, and my father-in-law's, so not only on me all depends, and your situation is really difficult. Excuse me, I have to go. Aneka, don't be sad. Here, have a chocolate bar. And he smilingly handed the little girl a large milk candy. The child timidly took it and said quietly, Thank you. I believe you will help us. I don't want mommy to die. The banker returned home to the posh mansion. There were no changes in the kitchen, the food from the restaurant. The wife did not even move and did not rush to meet her husband. On the contrary, she was dressed in a provocative dress with a huge slit and stiletto heels. Vyacheslav tiredly asked, Where are you going at night? Olga wrinkled her nose and answered grudgingly, For a bachelorette party. We decided to have a rest with our friends. Why shouldn't I? The man shook his head disapprovingly. And you do not often go out at night? And the outfit is not for the bachelorette party? Don't you think you're out of line? Olga suddenly grinned sarcastically with her brightly colored mouth and replied sarcastically, As I remember, you with the help of my father got the position of a banker. So be happy. And the rest is none of your business. Ciao. I'll be late. And she left, clacking her heels loudly, without even looking back. Vyacheslav sank tiredly into an armchair. He felt sick and disgusted. How sick and tired of everything. And this marriage of convenience. And this obnoxious silicone sponger Olga. And this mansion, where everything alien. It's like I'm not living my own life, for God's sake. And then he remembered the old woman's documents. They were still in his briefcase. Well, since the evening was gone anyway, I'll at least look through it. And he went deeper into reading, but only when he saw the name of the sick person. He almost collapsed. He even shook from shock. Skvortsova, Maria Skvortsova. It cannot be. Oh my God. So that's who looks like Aneka. Exactly. The man jumped to the bar, took out a brandy, poured it into a glass, and sipped a good portion. Then he leaned back in his chair and plunged into deep memories of the past. Masha grew up in the village. Her childhood could hardly be called happy. Her parents died too early, her mother in childbirth. Her father was hit by a combine 3 years later due to carelessness. So her granddaughter was brought up by her grandfather Zakhar and grandmother Seema. They lived tight and poor, fed from the vegetable garden, and Zoika the goat helped them out. Granny made tasty cheese and cooked milk porridge. As a child, Masha was more an ugly duckling than a beauty, thin, unshapely, and a little wild. But when she graduated from school, everything has changed. She simply turned into a beautiful swan, slender, shapely beauty with prominent breasts size 3 and plump from nature, sensual lips. All the local men openly looked at her, smacking their tongues. Baba Seema was seriously worried, and all taught her granddaughter wisdom. Look at me, Masha. Do not fool around. Men have one thing on their mind. They all placate, promise a lot, and suddenly, bang. And in the bushes, the girl remembered her grandmother's words and stubbornly held her ground, not letting anyone get close to her. With work in the village was quite sad, and Masha hopelessly went to a farm to Ivshikin, a local rich man. She just got a job, tried to get used to the hell of hard work, but she didn't get used to it. The rich man was a well-known lover of women and booze. Everyone in the village knew it. So he began to woo Masha. The back pinches, then the breast looks intently, then tries to press the scared girl in a dark corner, and he whispers to her, My dear, my girl, how sweet you are. I'm drooling. Be mine. I'll make you rich. You'll walk in silks and bathe in gold. This fat, sleazy and disgusting womanizer was so disgusting to Masha that she squeezed him out of her eyes to avoid seeing his sweaty, disgusting face. And one day the girl could not stand it, ran home, cried and told her grandmother Seema everything. I won't go to the farm anymore, Grandma, no matter what you do. That filthy Ivshkin is groping me, promising me golden mountains, just to get me into bed with him. And I'm so disgusted. I don't know what to do. Granny was indignant and raised her hands to the sky. Look at him, what a bastard. Not for nothing the woman whispered, He wouldn't miss a single skirt. And he's got a wife and 3 kids, and he's still there. The damn dog. Zucker, come here. We'll hold a council. Have you heard what the granddaughter is grieving about? What's there to do? There's no other work in the village. Maybe we should go to the chairman, complain. Let him put a lid on this ghoul. Grandpa spat and smeared his hand. What's the use? They're all in the same world, and they all wash their hands with it. Mashka's a good-looking girl. She should wear a burqa. She won't have a life here. Let her go to town. It's crowded there. No one cares about anyone. Maybe she'll find a job. Maybe she'll marry well. All the young people have already gone there, and no one is still missing. Masha was both happy and frightened at the prospect, and grandmother Seema agreed with her husband and ran to the neighbors to ask for money for her granddaughter's trip, and for the first time, for they did not have a penny after all. Thanks to kind people, they collected a lot of money. Granny divided everything into piles, wrapped it in a handkerchief, and began to instruct her granddaughter. So, don't keep everything in one place, or they will steal it. Put a little bit of it in different pockets, and keep an eye on your purse and bag. Otherwise I know you. You open your mouth like a crow, and he's gone. I've calculated that you should have enough for a room and live for a month or 2, and then it's up to you. Don't be lazy. Remember what I said about the dogs. That's it. It's time for the road. Let me hug you, granddaughter. Don't forget your grandfather and grandmother. Come and visit. Grandma Seema cried and waved for a long time. Grandpa Zucker only grumbled, "What are you doing? For God's sake. You're getting damp. Think about good things, or you'll be stolen or something else." Everything with Mashika will be fine. The girl is pretty, not lazy, with a head. On the train, Masha felt uneasy and had all kinds of bad thoughts in her head. But at the train station, a very nice intelligent man joined her in the compartment. They jovially chatted about different things. He joked and told interesting stories. The girl laughed without a pause and became completely relaxed. After a couple of hours the man cheerfully said goodbye and left, and Masha went into her bag for money, decided to order tea, and suddenly she did not find her purse. Everything went cold inside her. Most of the money was there. Stunned girl rushed to the conductor. "God, my traveling companion took my purse with money. When? How did he manage? I do not understand." Chattering all the time, I spread my ears. "What can I do?" She just shrugged her shoulders. "What a young lady. I can't believe you've never been on a train. There are more rascals here than at the station. You should have been more careful with your property." The rascal must have got off the train. Now it's all over. Masha spent the rest of the way weeping like a beluga. She had no idea what to do or where to go. She scrapped through her pockets her grandmother's sacks, but it was a drop in the ocean. Not even enough for a room. She imagined horrible pictures of herself begging for alms, or worse. She scolded herself with the last words, "God, what a fool." "Well," told her grandmother, as in water, "look sharp." But no. What a good man. What will happen to me next, if I have not yet reached, and already got into a story? Out at the station, Masha frightenedly stared around, clutching her traveling bag and handbag. She looked like a lost and cornered animal. Her head was a mess. Suddenly she was approached by an older, stylishly and expensively dressed lady. She immediately identified with a trained eye the young frightened provincial girl, who obviously had something wrong. The stranger introduced herself. "Hello, darling. My name is Zoya Grigorievna. I'm a recruiter. I'm a recruiter for a cleaning company. Did something happen to you?" The girl was even more frightened. She had never heard such words before, and she answered quietly, sobbing, "My name is Me. I came from the village to look for work. All my neighbors collected money from me, enough for a room and food for the first time. But the man on the train sat next to me, and somehow managed to slip his confidence and steal my purse. What to do, I do not know. But keep in mind, I do not do all sorts of impropriety. My grandmother warned me that in the big city, and can offer such things." Zoya laughed heartily. "You don't understand, silly. I'm recruiting maids and cleaners, not what you think. If you need such work, I can help. At the same time with the issue of housing will solve, because housekeepers tend to live in the house of the rich. Only I say at once, you need to work hard, follow all orders without question. The owners are not rude and not impertinent. Well, do you know what? as you put it, obscenities. And then there are such individuals, and strive to get to her rich husbands in bed. Masha calmed down, smiled, and shook her head. Then I agree. Don't worry, I'm not like that. I've never even had a boyfriend. I will try very hard. You will not regret hiring me. On the same day Zoya Grigorievna gave Masha a full briefing. It took another couple of days to teach her all the tricks of the trade, how to use modern household appliances, and the girl was safely hired at the Bobrovs' mansion in the countryside. They were bankers and very famous businessmen. Apart from her, another maid, Svetlana, and a cook, Anna, lived in the house. The head of the family, Igor Yurievich, was a stern little man with glasses. He said hello to Masha, without even looking at her. But his wife, Irina Petrovna, Masha did not like her. The lady was overweight, well-dressed, the face grimace of dissatisfaction, her lips pressed together, and her gaze seemed to drill right through. She dutifully and meticulously inquired about Masha, who she was, and where she was from, told her the rules of their family, the daily schedule, and her duties. Finally, the woman threw, "My son Slavik lives with us. He is a student, graduating from the Faculty of Economics. He's finishing his economics degree. I warn you, don't even look in his direction. Otherwise I know you sneaky provincial girls." Masha barely made it through the exam and was finally released to the servants' quarters. There she met Svetlana. The woman asked quietly, "What? Has our megaphone already intimidated you?" "She can do that. But do not be afraid. I'll teach you everything. They pay good and stable. You're such money where you will not turn, so that I'll agree and do your job as you should. And don't pay any attention to Irina Petrovna and try not to make her angry. Don't let her see you. She is always so unhappy." And so Masha's working life began. At first she did not succeed in everything, because in the village the girl only a broom and a rag knew no gadgets. But Sveta, as promised, quickly taught her what to do, and in a month Masha was already coping with any task on the fly. The wages really paid off. Masha had never held that kind of money in her hands before. It would have been fine, just work and be happy, if it had not been for Slavik. The first time she saw him, she was cleaning the windows in the hallway. The girl stretched herself as hard as she could, and tried to wipe them down as best she could. The boy quietly came up behind her and admired her, the tall, slender busty beauty, her blonde curls disheveled from under her bonnet, drops of sweat on her temples. He could not take his eyes off the new maid and shamelessly considered her. Masha felt someone's gaze on her back and looked away. She felt uncomfortable and nearly fell down from the stepladder owing to the fact that her son, a tall and athletic handsome boy, was unceremoniously staring at her. But Slava deftly picked her up and prevented her from falling. Once in the arms of a guy, Masha immediately felt dizzy. He smelled of expensive tart male perfume, and a touch of strong hands on her waist sent 1,000 shivers down her body. The girl immediately recoiled and mumbled, "Excuse me, Vyacheslav Igorovich, you scared me. I did not expect to see anyone at this time. It's morning. All to work." The young man winked at her. "Why so formal, Vyacheslav Igorovich? Just call me Slavik. We are, in fact, the same age as you. And you, I take it, Masha. Where do they make such beauties here? You shouldn't be a maid. You should work in a modeling agency." "I'm delighted." The girl blushed at these compliments, completely embarrassed herself, apologized again, and grabbed a bucket and a rag and ran away. Next she and Sveta went to knock out the pillows, and her partner whispered to her, "I saw, near you hostess's son robbed. Do not even think. Otherwise Medra would burn you to death. She would take 3 skins for her beloved son. Although he's a good-looking guy, I don't deny it, but you know, guys like us don't get anything but a bed. So why ruin your career? If you embarrass yourself, no one would take you to a nice house." Masha nodded her head. "Yes, I'll try to stay out of his sight. I don't want any trouble." From that day on Masha's work was a real cat-and-mouse game, especially when the boy came home after classes. The more the girl tried to keep out of Slava's sight, the more he, as if on purpose, appeared out of nowhere and tried to talk to her. The conversation seemed harmless, nothing like that, but the way he was looking at her, it was more expressive than any ardent confession. Masha's gaze made everything inside her break and overturn. millions of butterflies fluttering in her stomach. She fell into a stupor, blushed, and like a little girl, just ran away. Another weekend came. Sveta was let go home, and she went into town, and the hosts also went to see important guests, and said they would definitely be gone by the evening. Masha dutifully ran all the errands and was completely free. But she had nowhere to go. No one and nowhere was waiting for her in the capital, and to go home to the village and back far away. So the girl decided to take a walk along the forest paths, to get some fresh air. She enjoyed the nature, breathed in the fresh scent of pine needles and herbs, and thought about her own things. Suddenly, as if out of thin air, Slavik appeared right in front of her. She even jerked in surprise. The guy laughed. "Hi, Masha. Did I frighten you again?" "Well, I'm sorry, and I came home early. Decided to go for a run. I often do sports here. I see my beauty coming. Well, how could I pass by?" Masha blushed again, and Slavik suddenly pressed her to the muddy pine and passionately dipped into her plump, sensual lips. The girl tried to moo and fight back at first, but after a second she just got dizzy and her legs buckled from the pleasure, and she stopped resisting. How sweet those kisses and hugs of his were. The strong, trained body, the scent of the man, and that look that seemed to paralyze her. Breaking free of the embrace at last and panting, Masha gibbered, "Slavika, do not." "What are you doing? Why do you need me? I'm just a simple village maid, not your equal, not a couple. We can't be together. Your mother warned me on the first day to stay away from you." The boy answered her with heat, "My silly girl, you don't know what you're worth. You're a beauty, a goddess. You're a goddess. You're a beauty, you're a goddess. Ever since I've seen you, I've lost all peace and sleep. I swear it. You're all I can think about. Why do you keep pushing me away? I feel that you like me, too." But Masha suddenly cried and ran to her room. She closed herself inside, fell on the bed, and sobbed even harder. And Slava was right. They were drawn to each other like a magnet, and there was nothing they could do about it. And now, after such a passionate kiss, she was literally shaking. Her whole being, which had never before known male love and affection, literally demanded a continuation. She scolded herself. What kind of fool am I? Again I look for myself problems on his head. Why did I have the misfortune to fall in love with him? What a punishment. There was a soft knock at the door. Slava whispered, "Masha, open up, please." "Well, I beg you, we need to talk." The girl exhaled, wiped away her tears, and crawled to open the door. On the threshold stood a boy, smiling guiltily, and holding in his hand a charming bouquet of daisies. "Excuse me if I scared you, or hurt you. I did not mean it, honestly. You know, you're the most beautiful girl I've ever met, the purest and most open, and I'm definitely in love with you. I called my parents. They will be gone for a long time. We're all alone in the house, except for the gardener. Let's go to my room. It's kind of awkward to talk here." And Masha, of course, went. They talked long and warmly. Slava confessed his love for her, and then he began to cover her neck and body with tender kisses and whisper such words to her. Well, it was on that day that their first intimacy happened. The guy was amazed that Masha was a virgin, because she was already 19 years old. By city standards, this is simply unthinkable. He began to treat her even more tenderly and reverently, realizing that she had given him the dearest thing. From that day on they began to meet, first secretly, furtively kissing, like schoolchildren on every corner, and then officially. After all, you can't hide a thing in a bag. Slavik really loved Masha. He was not playing, and intended to marry her. The guy sincerely believed that his parents would understand him, because true love is more important than officials and regalia. But when he announced it officially, at dinner, and introduced Masha as his bride, a deafening scandal broke out in the Bobrov family. Irina Petrovna shouted like a knife, "It will never happen." "Slavik, are you full of handbay? What was it that surprised you in bed with that redneck that you decided to marry the maid? Do you want the whole press and high society to rubbish our family name? It's an unheard of disgrace." Then she turned to Masha, her face twisted with rage, and shouted, "Get out of here. I knew it, that there was no reason to hire a charming peasant girl as a maid. And you're good, you're not lost. You're like a tick, You're all over my son. You want a residence in the capital and a life in chocolate. You'll get by. You'd better earn it first. You're used to spreading your legs. Masha sobbed and tried to justify herself. Why should you do that? Slava and I really love each other. I don't need anything from you. Money is not the main thing in life. Irina Petrovna pointed at the door. Get out. You're fired. I'll complain to the agency, and they won't take you to any more decent houses. Masha ran away in tears to pack her things. Svetka whispered to her, and I told you, Slavik will make a fool of himself and that's it. Mama will never let you meet, much less get married. The girl sobbed. I don't believe it. He said he loved me and couldn't live without me. He's coming for me now, and we'll leave this house together. Svetka only twisted her temple, and went away, out of harm's way, or else she will fall under the hot hand. And in the meantime the fighting continued. Slava on emotions shouted, also, then I will also leave. We will make it on our own. If millions are more important to you than the happiness of your beloved son. I love her. Don't you understand? I really love her. Then my father intervened. Until then he had been silently watching. So, son, here's the scale. On one half of it, put your career, prosperity, a full and rich life, and her help. And on the other half, put your Masha, and that's it. How long will you last with her in some dorm with cockroaches without normal conditions? How long can you stand working 12 hours? You'll run away from such a life in a month. Only I won't take you back. That's my condition. You choose. If you leave with her now, I'll block all your cards, and you'll never come back here again. By the way, there's your sweetheart, leaving with the suitcase. Why don't you run after her? Masha turned around for a second and tried to catch Slavik's eye, but he lowered his eyes and did not move. She shouted after him, you coward, you bastard, I hate you, and she ran away in tears. She was seething and bubbling inside. Grandma was right, and so was Svetka. All of them only wanted one thing. How could he? He promised he wouldn't betray us, and we would be together to the end. He said such words, swore his love, but he himself, a mama's boy. I despise him, and I am a fool. Fell in love, spread my ears, swam. The good thing was that she almost never spent the money she had earned during those months, and she managed to rent a corner from a wonderful woman, Klavdia Matveevna, on the outskirts of the city. But when a month later Masha realized she was pregnant, she was horrified and burst into tears again, honestly telling her landlady everything. Klavdia Matveevna first began to advise her, why don't you tell your fiancé Tilda copyright that you are pregnant? Maybe he'll take pity and marry you. Or will he help? Anything can happen. But Masha just waved her hand. No, Babaklava, he's not getting married. He can't get away from his mother. If that woman even finds out I'm pregnant, she'll drive me to pieces. I'd rather have an abortion. Klavdia Matveevna shook her head and looked at the girl reproachfully. Don't you dare, girl. Don't take such a sin on your soul. You will get her up on her feet. You will not be the first or the last. I'll help in any way I can. I'll keep an eye on her. And killing a living soul is the last thing to do. A child is God's plan. It's not given to everyone. I would have given anything at one time to have children, but no. God didn't give it to me. That is how they began to live. Masha got a job at a kiosk nearby, selling pastries. Ashet, an Armenian, saw that the woman had already had a slightly protruding belly, understood everything, but still took her to work and felt sorry for her. He knew there were not many people running for the job, but she would hold on to it with her teeth. And so it turned out. Masha worked right up to the birth. When contractions started, she called Ashet and said in a panic, I closed the kiosk, I'm going to the maternity hospital. The keys are where I usually keep them. Don't take my place, I beg you. Put me on a night shift or two. When the hospital brought her a large, rosy-cheeked Aneka, she kissed her and cried, so the baby was like Slavik. The woman whispered, your daddy doesn't need us, so what the hell with him? We'll get by ourselves, my good man. We'll cope. The first year of the child's life was especially difficult for Masha. The woman was literally torn between work and baby, slept for 4 hours and then breaks. Thanks Babaklava, rescued, and Anya was quiet, not causing much trouble for the elderly nurse. And then it got easier. Anya went to nursery school. If she was sick, She stayed with Balaklava or sat in the kiosk at Masha, on sacks in the corner, drawing. Not once in all this time did Slavik make himself known. He just crossed out of his life this fleeting affair with the maid, and that's all. And Masha, no matter how hard she tried, could not get Slava out of her heart. He sat there firmly, though she now had mixed feelings for him: hatred, anger, contempt, love, tenderness, awe. She understood that they would never meet again. He was too high-flying and should forget him and go on living, but she could not. On that fateful night, Masha was hurrying home to her daughter. She was just crossing the road at the intersection. The light turned green for pedestrians, and Masha started walking, and then a bright red sports car flew straight at her at a huge speed. The woman only had time to notice that the driver was a blonde, and that was it. Next came the squeal of brakes and darkness. Slavik, of course, knew nothing of this since he was a coward and betrayed Masha. They did not communicate. His parents persuaded him a year later to marry Olga, the daughter of a millionaire banker and owner of the coolest and most expensive gas stations in town. Wedding was magnificent and pompous. The chosen one was platinum dull blonde, expertly molded by the best professionals, the figure also without flaws, and everything would be all right. But for one but took place. But after quickly satisfying all her sexual desires in bed with him, the glamorous woman was frankly bored. She wanted a drive, to fly to Paris or relax in Bali, to be carried in the arms and worshipped, and fans used to do so. But her husband was different. He burned day and night at work. After all, Daddy had given him a position as manager of a large bank. When she looked into his eyes, she wanted to see admiration, but there was clearly red contempt. This infuriated the woman so much that she, without thinking twice, got herself a lover out of boredom, and then another one, and then another one. Slavik felt something wrong and began to express his indignation. They often began to argue. It was incomprehensible to him how a married lady could go out all night and come home in the morning tipsy. It was unheard of. But every time Olga put him on the spot: "You live in my mansion, and you work in my father's bank, so sit quietly and keep your mouth shut. Otherwise I'll complain to Daddy, and they'll throw you out like a dog. What am I supposed to do with you at home? Stand at the stove and give birth to screaming babies? Oh, no, you don't. That's not what I was born for." Slavik was indignant. "What did you get married for? I don't understand." "If you don't want a family and children," the woman laughed, "for the same reason you do." "Who asked us? My parents benefited from it, that's all. Now they have a powerful corporation, everyone is happy. And me too. By the way, in high society I have a decent spouse, and I'm a lady of status, and where I disappear at night is none of your business. I'm bored in bed with you. I'm sick of it all." So they lived like cats and dogs, two complete strangers under one roof. They had slept in separate rooms for a long time, and the closeness was gone. A million times Slavik regretted that he had chickened out and betrayed his beloved. After all, he had never forgotten Masha, and he knew that he would never love anyone so much again. Vyacheslav reread the diagnosis again and again, whispering to himself, "Masha Skvortsova, Masha Skvortsova." Lord, it turns out that Annika is my daughter. My beloved woman lives in misery and is now dying, and I am sitting here drinking cognac! With trembling hands he dialed the number of the hospital and found out exactly where Masha was lying. He did not put that off for long. The man went there and decided to talk to the attending physician. The time was late, but money solves everything, and the doctor agreed to meet. He sighed and said, "Frankly speaking, Skvortsova's situation is the worst. As a result of the collision, she suffered a serious head injury and has been in a coma for a month, without any progress. There is only one chance to change something, which is to perform an urgent operation on the brain and to remove the damaged areas. But here, too, there is no guarantee that the woman will survive it or survive at all. Personally, I will not take on that responsibility. There is only one specialist in the capital, a virtuoso of his craft and a lover of experiments, is Pirogov Andrei Gennadievich. Ask him, maybe he will take on the operation." "Well, then, it is a very expensive operation, and the family has no money," As I understand, it is not available. So, Vyacheslav was shaking. He was almost shouting, "Give me the coordinates of Pirogov. I'll meet with him tomorrow." "Can I see her for a few minutes, please?" Exclamation mark. The doctor just waved his hand. "No matter what, the patient is not alive." The man quietly entered the ICU. What he saw shocked him. Instead of fresh, glowing beauty Mashenka on the bed lay haggard woman, his eyes sunk inward. Her cheeks were gone, the color of her face merged with the sheets, not a drop of blood, and all her skinny body enveloped by dozens of sensors and wires. Vyacheslav instinctively took her hand. The towel was icy and dry, and began to whisper to her, "Mashenka, my girl, forgive me, bastard. You will not die, do you hear? I will lay my bones, but I will get you out of death's clutches, for your daughter's sake, for our sake. I still love you, do you hear? Believe me." It even seemed to him that her eyelids twitched, and he began to ask her forgiveness again and again. The next day Vyacheslav put everything aside and went to see Pirogov, the renowned luminary of medicine. Andrei Gennadievich carefully studied all the medical documents of Masha and thought, then said, "Of course, the operation can be carried out, but it will only be at my own risk, and there is no 50% confidence that the patient will survive. It's too late. You know, most likely there are irreversible processes, and the woman can either die immediately without regaining consciousness, or remain, how should I put it, an incompetent person. I'll tell you the amount, it's very large, I warn you, and once again I emphasize that the risk of death is enormous. And I only agree to this because it is the first time for me too, purely out of experimental interest." Vyacheslav began to calm him down. "Well, you said yourself, if you don't do anything, Masha will die anyway. There's no chance she'll come out of the coma and get better. Isn't she an incompetent person now? So why not try to save her life? If there was even a 1% chance that a miracle would happen." The sum was really enormous, even for someone as wealthy as Vyacheslav. He emptied all his cards and accounts, and quickly sold only the recently purchased expensive Porsche, and that was barely enough to cover all the costs. Immediately made a transfer of funds to the clinic, and called Grandma Klava. "Good afternoon, Klavdia Matveyevna. It's Vyacheslav Igorovich calling you. Do you remember we talked about a loan for your friend Masha Skvortsova? I have news for you. Dictate the address. I'll come to you." On the way the businessman stopped at the Children's World store and bought Aneka a new jacket and shoes, and a lot of clothes, toys, and 2 bags of groceries. He had a hard time finding the right house number in the yards. The dwelling was old, but quite well maintained and comfortable. They were already waiting for him there. The kettle was boiling in the kitchen, an old lady was fussing and setting the table. Aneka was hovering around and helping her grandmother. Excited Klavdia Matveyevna said hello, invited her guest to the table, and asked, "Thank you, Vyacheslav Igorovich, for not forgetting about us. Well, will you give us the credit? Will they approve it? But they say in the hospital, that it is too late already, and Mashenka is unlikely to survive. And I do not want to believe it." And the elderly woman began to wipe tears that ran into her eyes with a corner of her handkerchief. The man rushed to reassure her, "Don't worry, you won't need a loan, and no one would give you such a huge amount with your income. I have already paid for everything, the operation the day after tomorrow at the Institute of Neurosurgery. It will be the best luminaries of the capital, Pirogov Andrei Gennadievich. I have agreed. Let's pray and hope for the best." The old woman even shook her hands and could not believe what she heard. "Lord, you're our savior, our benefactor. But what a lot of money. God help Masha to recover, we will work it all off, if only she survives." Aneka suddenly came quietly and firmly embraced Vyacheslav with her warm little hands. She looked straight into his eyes and said, "Thank you, uncle. I will pray for you now, and for my mother, that she survives." "She's not going to die, is she?" "I have no one but her and Babiklava." Vyacheslav instinctively hugged the baby, and felt such warmth and tenderness inside, gently flicked her nose and held out 2 huge bags. "It's all for you, weasel. Come and measure." "Or maybe not the right size, so I'll instantly change." The woman and the girl, aghast, and the baby ran happily trying on new clothes and toys to consider. And the businessman began to lay out on the table products from the remaining packages. Here, this is also for you. At first, I think I took the most necessary. Balaclava even cried, "Thank you very much, my dear man, for being so concerned about other people. Nowadays people forget about their own relatives, and even strangers." Vyacheslav suddenly said in a husky, disruptive voice, "Masha is no stranger to me, do you understand? This is my first love, the strongest, and I betrayed her once. Greedy, I am a bastard, not a nice man. I ruined my fate and hers. Maybe Annika is my daughter too, I don't know. So I really want her to live, and I will be on my knees to beg her forgiveness." And he waved his hand and left, trying to suppress the sobs that were bursting from his chest. On the day of surgery, Vyacheslav did not go to the bank at all, passing all the duties to the deputy. He walked, like a tiger in a cage, along the hospital corridor, and waited. Time seemed to have stopped altogether, and the hand of the clock froze and did not move. He asked the Lord in all sincerity, in his own words, "Dear God, help me. I wish Masha had lived. I know that I am a scoundrel and very guilty before her, but you see that I still love her. I do not need anyone else, only her. Make her well, please." On the couch sat quietly Balaclava and Annika. The girl did not cry, did not get hysterical, apparently also focused on praying and waiting. 4 hours passed. Finally, out of the operating room, Andrew Gennadievich soared, took off his cap and came to Vyacheslav Igorovich. "Well, gentlemen, you can rejoice. I do not want to boast, but I am very satisfied with the result. Now look at the dynamics. But the chances that the woman will come to her senses are great, so let's hope for the best. You can't come to her yet, she is in intensive care. Come back tomorrow." Vyacheslav began to shake hands with the professor and thank him. Anya also ran to the doctor and tearfully said, "Thank you for saving my mother. She will recover, won't she?" The doctor averted his eyes and quietly replied, "I want to believe that your mother will recover, but not everything depends on me. I did everything I could." The operation was a success, and Masha finally came to her senses. As if from a thick fog, she heard her daughter's voice. "Hi, Mommy. How are you? Already better? When you open your eyes, I miss you so much, and I pray every day. Balaclava and I will go get you some medicine, and someone wants to talk to you." And then Masha heard the husky voice, which she had never forgotten. "Mashenka, my darling, it's me, Slavik. Forgive me, dear, I'm the last bastard. I betrayed you so much. Believe me, after all these years I haven't been able to forget you. I remember everything. Our kisses, your overflowing laughter, your big beautiful eyes. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me, but I really want you to get better." Everything inside the woman suddenly turned over and warmed. She pulled herself together and wanted to shout out to the whole world, "I have not forgotten you either. I love you too!" But it turned out only slightly opened her eyes and whispered, "Me too." All the sensors on the life support system suddenly lit up red and beeping, and frightened Slavik ran to get the nurse. "Here, quickly." Masha woke up. Immediately into the room rushed a bunch of staff, started a commotion, began to look at the woman's pupils and checked the reaction. The man was escorted out the door. Just then Annika and her grandmother arrived and were greatly frightened when they saw the panic in the ward. The child immediately cried, "Mom's bad, right? Why are there so many doctors there? Has she gotten worse?" The man held the baby close to him and calmed her down. "On the contrary, honey, do not worry, Mommy is awake." Can you imagine? She heard your voice and mine, and came to her senses. I can't even believe it. They finally let them in to see Masha. The woman saw all her family and friends and cried. Annika threw herself around her mother's neck and began to hug and kiss her. Masha wailed, "Daughter, sweetheart, how I worried about you. How glad I am that all is well." Balaclava, thank you for looking after my mischievous girl, for not abandoning her, not sending her to an orphanage. Slava, how are you here? I thought we'd never see each other again. The old lady said, "That's the director of the bank where Anya and I were taking a loan. Vyacheslav Igorovich paid for your surgery. If it wasn't for him, I don't know. Nobody gave you a chance. Only the famous Professor Pirogov undertook surgery at his own risk. And that was because Vyacheslav miraculously persuaded him to do it. So that's it. Masha with gratitude and so fondly looked at Slavik and said quietly, "Thank you for life. You're my guardian angel now." "Slava, we should probably talk." Anya and her grandmother nodded understandingly and left the room. The man sat down closer, and looked at this short-cropped sparrow with huge and so attractive eyes, and admired her. He automatically compared her to Olga's doll-like artificial face, and realized that he would not be able to be under the same roof with her for a single second. The man took Masha's hand and said, looking straight into her eyes, "My darling, forgive me, if you can. I am so sorry before you. I chickened out. I went along with my parents. I regretted it 100 times. They talked me into marrying Olga, the daughter of a millionaire. But we're complete strangers. We live like cats and dogs. You are still in my heart, and I don't need anyone else." Masha's eyes immediately filled with tears. "So you're married. So it will not work out between us again. But I want you to know that Aneka is your daughter. I found out about the pregnancy after we broke up, and I decided to keep the baby." Vyacheslav waved his hands. "The fact that Tanya is mine, I already understood. I guessed it." "Don't say that. I won't leave you now, you know that. Today I will talk to Olga, and we will divorce her. I want to live with you and my daughter, understand? I beg you, believe me this time, please." Masha grinned bitterly. "Do you think she will give you a divorce so easily? And if not, I'm scared. I remember how your mother humiliated and disgraced me, and I do not want to go through that again." The man replied quietly, "Don't worry and don't think about bad things. Get better. I bought all the medicines. I will come every day." "Tell me better. How did it all happen? Why haven't they found the one who ran you over?" The woman sighed and shrugged her shoulders. "I don't remember much of anything. My green light came on. I went to the crossing at Pushikin, and suddenly out of the darkness jumped out of the red car. I only out of the corner of my eye managed to see that the driver was a blonde. That's all." Vyacheslav bent over and gently kissed Masha. "I'll deal with it. The perpetrator must be punished." "Well, I ran. It's time. Know that I'm happy I found you, and no longer allow myself to lose you, and will not let anyone hurt." Masha wiped away a tear. "However, I love you, Slava, and all these years I have never been able to tear you from my heart." Vyacheslav came home late at night. To his surprise, Olga was at home and was waiting for him. She had a concerned look. "Where have you been for so long? What is going on? You have never stayed late before." "My father said you sold your car and withdrew all the money from your accounts. What was that for? I wonder." The man sighed and replied, "Olga, we need to have a serious talk. I needed the money to help someone who was in trouble. I want to divorce you. We've been strangers for a long time and we don't love each other, and you know that very well. So why torture each other, especially since you have someone else? I know. I also met a woman I foolishly lost years ago, and I still love her very much." "So," Olga's face twisted with anger, "is this the maid that your mother kicked out with a bang, and you spent all your money on her? Are you out of your mind? I'm not giving you a divorce. You know that. I don't want any more gossip in high society. I'll call your father right now, and you'll be naked and barefoot." Surprisingly, Slavik was not frightened or upset. On the contrary, he was relieved. "I don't care. Do what you want. I'm packing my things, I'm leaving, and we're getting a divorce." This should have been done a long time ago. Olga was stunned by her husband's determination, because he had never crossed her before. She was hysterical, shouted, and began to call her beloved daddy, and Vyacheslav silently packed his things in a suitcase. He wanted to hurry to be free of this affair, in which he had fallen many years ago at the instigation of his parents. Now he had someone to risk and he wanted to radically change his life, for the sake of Masha and his daughter. The scandal was deafening. The millionaire was terribly furious. He immediately fired Vyacheslav from his position as a banker, blocked all of his accounts, and even went to the hospital, wanted to intimidate Masha. But he did not succeed. This time the woman stood firm on its own. "You can even kill me if you want so, but from Slavik, I will not give up. We love each other. Do you understand? Just in case Balaklava went with Anya to her friend's place in the village just to be on the safe side. Who knows what those crazy millionaires will get into their heads. Vyacheslav wasted no time either, for now he moved into a rented apartment, and decided to look through the security cameras at the very intersection where Masha had been run over. What he saw threw him into shock. His father-in-law was driving the red foreign car, and his wife, Olga, was at the wheel, not alone, but with her young lover. The recording clearly showed how she hit Masha and immediately drove away, without even looking back. What a twist. The man was furious. What a jerk. How is it possible? Hit a man and not even get out of the car to check on him? No help. How could anyone live in peace after that? Go to expensive salons, tanning salons, fitness classes, knowing that you may have killed a man? Such cynicism was simply not in his mind. He made arrangements with the employees of the city's video camera company and took the tape. Without thinking twice, he dialed Olga's number. She immediately responded, "What, darling? Scared your chicken? Come to your senses? That's just it. Come back immediately. Ask for forgiveness." "While I am kind," the man interrupted her menacingly. "Listen here. I have in my hands CCTV footage, and it perfectly shows how you ran over Masha and fleeing the scene of the crime. And I'll go to the police with her tomorrow. How much jail time do you think you will get? And what will they say about you in high society? You're such a bitch. You almost killed a man yourself, you have a young lover, and you dare accuse me of something? Or should I show that tape to your father?" "I guess I'll do that. I'll send him a copy. Let him admire his precious daughter." Olga's voice trembled, and she immediately changed her tone. "Slava, listen, don't get so hot. I don't want to go to the police. I don't want to go to jail. I won't survive there. And I don't want my father to. He'll kill me. You know him. What do you want? Let's make a deal." Vyacheslav said, "You'll transfer to my account the amount that went to Masha's surgery, and convince your daddy not to touch me and Masha, and disappear from my life forever. Otherwise I will carry out my threat. Is that clear?" Olga quickly gibbered, "Yes, of course. I will do everything. We'll leave quietly and amicably." "Thank you. You're right. I've never loved you either. The other night I had too much to drink, and I got cold feet when I realized I'd hit a man. I just drove away, that's all." "What was I supposed to do? Voluntarily go to jail?" The man sighed. "God be your judge. I've said it all. Bye." Olga kept her word. She transferred Slavik the money he had spent on the operation, and the millionaire's father stopped pestering Vyacheslav and Masha. The woman quickly went on demand. Slavik visited her in the hospital every day. They talked for a long time, held hands, and felt their hearts beating in unison. Soon Masha was discharged home. Grandma Klava returned with Danica from the village, and the family council decided to live together in the old woman's house. She asked for it. "My dears, all of you, live with me. After all, I am alone. During this time I became so attached to Annika and Masha. They are like a family to me now, even closer. The house is good, of course. It could use some repairs. It hasn't seen a man's hand for many years. And if I die, you will be left with it. I don't have any relatives anyway, but I have my own yard, a vegetable garden, and a place for my kid to run around. And I will not be bored in my old age." Everyone happily agreed. Vyacheslav did major repairs in just a couple of months, expanded the kitchen, equipped the children's room and added another room, a living room. Everything turned out modern and comfortable. The man did not regret at all that he was not rich now, got a job in a small firm as an economist, and worked hard. He forbade Masha to trade at the kiosk, and so she was not bored at home, bought her a sewing machine. After all, the woman had dreamed of it since childhood, and finally she enrolled in sewing courses. She began to do well, and soon her first orders came. Masha could not rejoice. She no longer had to tear herself up and carry boxes and work 12 hours. She enjoyed her home, family, and favorite hobby. Over the years Slavik has changed greatly, from a cheerful carefree major to a serious and responsible family man. 3 months had passed. Anya called the man Uncle Slava, and it just made him cringe, and he decided that it was time to tell the girl the whole truth and put it in his last name, as it should be. In the evening the man sat down next to the child in a chair and began an important conversation. "Annika, I need to talk to you seriously. You see, I'm not just a stranger's uncle, but your real father, and I would like to call you daughter and give you my last name. What do you think about that?" The girl looked at him strangely, and suddenly asked, "If you are my daddy, why didn't you live with us before? Where have you been all this time?" "So it was because of you that Mom cried a lot at night? Did you leave us? Didn't love us? Why do you love us now? What if you go away again and Mommy cries?" After all, if you love someone, you don't leave them. Anya forcefully threw the pencil on the floor and ran away in tears. Slava was very upset, even though he knew that his daughter was right about everything. If they love you, they don't leave you, and he did. Masha began to calm him down. "I told you it was too early. She would not understand. She is too young." Babaklava decided to intervene in the conversation, although she usually did not, but here it's too serious. "Do not be angry. I will talk to Annika. She's not a little girl. She's just offended as her father. She watched her mother suffer for so many years. We have to explain everything to her properly. She's a smart girl and mature beyond her years. She'll understand. I'll be right with you." Claudia Mtavivna came quietly into Anna's room. Anna was sobbing with her head against the pillow. The pensioner began to speak, as if not with her, but simply. There were a prince and a princess. They loved each other very much. But an evil witch came and broke them up, separated them. The girl suddenly said angrily, "Stop treating me like a little girl, Grandma. I'm a grown-up and I understand everything. My father left my mother, and he did not need us for so many years, and now he loves us, you see. And then suddenly he doesn't love us anymore." "Is that so?" The old woman sighed. "Well, if you're an adult, then listen to another fairy tale." "That's right, and you're right. Your father was young, and listened to his mother. She forbade him to love your mother. Yes, he chickened out. They broke up. Your mother realized she was pregnant with you, but she didn't say anything to her fiancé till the copyright. So you can't blame him either. He simply didn't know about you. Do you understand?" And when he read the documents and realized that it was his beloved woman who was dying, what did he do? "That's right, he saved her, just like in the fairy tale." "And why?" "Because, my dear, he loves her very much. Doesn't that make sense? Your daddy was very happy when he found out he had a daughter. Now you're together as a family. What's wrong with that? Tell me. Don't you love him?" The little girl answered quietly, "I do, and I want it to be so always." Babaklava then added, "Well, then why are you offended? We are all not angels, and often do not only good things, but also nasty, vile. Nothing can be done about it. That's the way people are built. The main thing is that your father realized his mistake, repented, and now you are together. And it's not our business to judge him, you little brat. Parents should be accepted and loved, no matter what they are, because they're the people closest to you. Understand?" The girl wiped her nose, smiled, and hugged her grandmother. "Babaklava, how clever you are. You told me everything so well. And why am I, stupid, at my daddy angry?" She happily rushed into the living room and took Slavik by the hand. "Well, Daddy, shall we go and drink tea? Dibs on that big chocolate candy is mine." The man happily picked up the little girl in his arms. "Daughter, my darling, you're no longer mad at Daddy?" She shook her head. "No, I'm not. I love you. You will always live with us now, right? And Mommy won't cry?" Slava kissed his treasure and promised, "I swear to you, Mom will never cry again, and you too, because I will never let anyone hurt you." Then everybody was drinking aromatic tea with candies and cakes, which Masha and Babaklava baked together, talking, making plans for tomorrow. Masha was sitting beside Slavik, pressed close to him, and she realized, this is it, women's happiness. It finally got to her. How happy and calm she felt. And Vyacheslav's parents lived out their days alone in their huge mansion. Irina Petrovna became over the years a bitter old woman, mercilessly nagging infirm husband. She cursed the maid who had taken away their son. After all, Slavik had completely stopped communicating with them. Once he only called once and said that he was absolutely happy with Masha and his daughter and that he was very sorry that he had lost so many years because of his own mother's hatred. Irina Petrovna wandered through the empty rooms, and literally howled with sadness and loneliness. She never realized that it was her own fault. But everything could have been very different. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like it. See you tomorrow.